Well, hi everyone, me again, and tonight I just wanted to have a little bit of a talk about hydration and getting your electrolyte balance right, and how important this is if you're a runner, obviously, but also for other athletes and even in for general everyday life. So we're all told we need to hydrate and have our 8 to 10 glasses of water a day and all of that sort of good stuff. But how do you know if you're actually dehydrated? How do you avoid it? What do you do if you get dehydrated? And how long does it actually take to recover your dehydration? So I believe that many people are chronically dehydrated. And a little test that I learned from the wonderful nutritionist Ben Warren when I went to one of his talks once was to get the little bit of, I don't know if you can see this, the base of your spine around here is a little flap that you can pull out at the base of your spine of skin. Now, if you can't pull anything, this has nothing to do with your fat levels in your body, okay? But if you can't pull out a really good little inch of skin there, right at the base of your spine, just above your bum, then you're very likely to be dehydrated. So that's just a little tip that I got from Ben Warren, and something that you can all go and test on yourselves tonight and see, hey, there's not much skin coming out there, or there's not much of I can't grab much, then you're quite likely to be dehydrated on a deeper level. And hydration isn't just something that you can just I'll have a couple of glasses of water and then she'll be right. One of the bigger problems that is often the case is that you've got electrolyte imbalances, and sometimes this sort of stuff can take even months to really rehydrate properly. It's one of the most common things. As you know, I've been dealing with Mum who's got had massive brain damage from an aneurysm, and one of the first things that goes when she gets even the slightest bit of dehydration is her ability to make any cognitive decisions, her ability to focus, her ability to process information goes down really fast. One of the signs often earlier for older people who have mental health issues or what they think is dementia, often if they just had really good hydration for a few days, some of those symptoms can clear up. Obviously not when it is something serious, but that's definitely a first thing to try if you've got an older person that is showing signs of not thinking clearly. Think about their hydration. But getting back towards the athletes, the runners, and so on, what are some of the symptoms of being dehydrated? You've obviously got your obvious ones, like you're thirsty. You're also things like muscle fatigue happens earlier. Your recovery can be slowed down so that your ability to do back-to-back training sessions is reduced and you won't be able to do it as well. Your performance obviously can drop. For runners, if you even get a small amount of dehydration, your ability to hold your pace will drop dramatically. The heat in your body can go up. You can get heat stroke easier, that sort of stuff. Your ability to make good decisions and your ability to think clearly and having mental fog and all these things is influenced by being dehydrated. Other signs to look out for are things like dry mouth, dry eyes, mental fatigue, your heart rate going up. So having an increase in heart rate that isn't related to, say, you're going faster or going up a hill, but your heart rate is constantly 10 beats higher than normal or something, that is definitely a warning sign that perhaps you are dehydrated. Another sign is that you might be lacking in motivation, where you think, I'm just lacking in motivation, this has nothing to do with my hydration. It can very well be because our hydration levels, our water levels in our body are just responsible for so many functions that, we can be definitely affected in our motivation levels. If you're going, for a training session and you feel like you're hitting the wall really early in the session and you usually have a lot more in the tank, it can be a sodium deficiency. So check that out really quickly. And that's getting onto the topic of actually electrolytes. So if you're hitting the wall, maybe go and have some Himalayan salt and some water, or have some electrolytes of some form, and see whether your motivation and your ability to actually fight a little bit harder and work a bit harder comes back. Another sign is if you are over sweating or under sweating. So you know what your normal levels of sweating are in a certain temperature. If you feel like you're sweating like crazy, or you feel like you're not sweating and you should be, another sort of warning sign. If you've been sweating and then you stop sweating and it's the same temperature and you're doing everything the same, that's a definite warning sign that you may be heading towards even heat stroke, if that's the case. So I want to tell you a couple of little stories of getting your electrolytes wrong. Now, this can be absolutely deadly because I've done a lot of desert races in extreme climates where electrolytes can mean living or dying. And I had something called a tetany seizure way back 20 odd years ago now when I was in Alaska. I'd been out in kayaking down the Yukon for a few weeks. We'd been trekking before that. We've been out in the bush for weeks with poor food, etc. And my electrolyte levels had obviously plummeted, my potassium in particular. And on this particular day, we'd just climbed a mountain. We'd come into town. It was freezing cold. And I was in a library recovering, just, getting somewhere warm because we were living in a tent at that stage. And all of a sudden, I started to have this massive seizure. So like cramps right throughout my body, like from the tips of my toes right up to my ears. My whole body was convulsing. My hands started to go like this, and it was the most painful thing I've ever felt in my life. And I knew that I was in deep trouble, and I was very lucky to survive it. Now, what it's called is a tetany seizure, and I'd actually, I was very lucky in that there was a paramedic in this particular library working on the electrical system or something, and he just happened to be there. He managed to get an ambulance really quickly, and they got me to the hospital before my heart stopped. And basically what they did, they found out that they did some tests, and they found out that my potassium levels were at 1.7, which they'd never seen in a living person before. And that's, I was, only minutes away from probably kicking the bucket. So I was really lucky in that case. And that is just from a deficiency in potassium. Something as simple as that, which regulates your muscle function. And there are other electrolytes, obviously your sodium, magnesium, as well as your potassium and others. And all of these things are really important to be taking on an ongoing basis. If you're training heavily, or if you're in a really hot climate and you're sweating all the time, then I recommend that you actually take electrolytes on a daily basis. Now, there are a lot of products out there that have got high sugar contents, and I don't sort of recommend those. And I'm not going to name any in particular brand here today, but there's some really good brands out there that have all your electrolytes covered, but don't have the horrible sugar contents that we don't really want to be having. I had another friend who nearly died in the outback of Australia. We were filming for something called Run the Planet, which was a TV pilot series that we were doing. He had a particular type of electrolyte that didn't have enough potassium in it, and he also had a tetany seizure and nearly died as well. So this is not something to be played with. So if you're an ultramarathon runner and you're running in hot climates, if you're running in deserts, or you're running even just when on a hot day, make sure that you are having enough electrolytes in. And if you're feeling like lack of motivation and you're not being able to think clearly, your mental fog, that sort of thing, then check that you're having enough sodium. One of the tricks that I love to do now is get some Himalayan salt, which is really good, got really good minerals, it's cheap, and put half a teaspoon of that in a glass of water, or even better, in a glass of orange juice after your training session when you need a bit of a kick as well. And that is a really good electrolyte, cheap electrolyte drink if you're looking for one that is a bit natural. Obviously, using really squeezed oranges or something would be even better. So let's have a look at a couple of things about how to avoid getting dehydrated. Obviously, you need to be hydrating before, during, and after you run. You also don't want to be overhydrating, because once again, that will water down the electrolytes in the body, if you like. So it's all about keeping the balance of the electrolytes with the water. If you're having more water, you also need more electrolytes to be able to hold it in. We're seeing more and more in many of the long distance races something called hyponatremia, which is when you've got too much water in the body and not enough electrolytes, and you have water retention. And you might notice this when you've got really fat fingers, or after a long race, or you've got a band of fluid around your stomach, that you've got a bit of a pot tummy. That can also be a sign that your kidneys aren't coping too well. So make sure you're drinking before, during, and after. And remember, it can take up to 24 to 48 hours for you to really recover if you're really badly dehydrated. So, you know, don't smash your body too much if you can avoid it. Obviously, if you're in the middle of a multi-day stage race or something, you're in a little bit of trouble. So what I like to do during runs is to sip. I keep a stomach that's always half full. I'm never pouring a big lump of water in at once, because that tends to like hit your guts, and then it's hard to run. But if you're just having little sips every few minutes, a sip on your bottle, and keeping that hydration coming in on a regular basis throughout your running, and the hotter it is, obviously, the more. Now, the amount that you should be drinking really depends on you, the size of your body, how much muscles you have, etc. So I won't go into that too much, except to say that it's very hard to digest more than 800 to 1,000 mils an hour of water, so you're probably not going to need more than that. But you know, as a good rule of thumb, if you're an average sized person and it's quite a hot day, you might want to be having to 200 to 250 mils every quarter of an hour or so, if you're in a high intensity sport like running, trail running, all that sort of stuff. So taking hydration products, making sure that they're good ones, they don't have a lot of sugar and chemicals in them and colorings and all that sort of crap. Make sure that they're a good quality one. So that's it for about today for the dehydration. If you've got any questions around hydrating, if you've hit the wall in one of your races and you think it might have been related to your hydration, please let me know, and I will try and give you some tips for that. And yeah, in your everyday life, keep your hydration going. If anything is going wrong, you're lacking in motivation, you're hitting the wall, you're feeling weak, your mental fatigue, you're unable to make good decisions. This is even important in your business life, you know, like if you want to be able to think clearly, make sure you're hydrated. If you've had a few drinks, for example, on the night, you know, if you go and have some electrolytes before you have anything, it can counteract some of the negative side effects of doing that. And if you're dehydrated after a few drinks at some stage, make sure that you definitely get some electrolytes in there. So I hope that's been helpful, guys. And please do let me know any questions. Just write to me at lisa@lisatamati.co.nz, or put a comment down below. And I'll try and answer any questions around running, around health, around mindset. Those are all my sort of specialty areas. Thanks for listening in today, and we'll talk to you soon.